Hi, I'm Dongxiang. Welcome to Digging into China, where we explore China in depth to review unique perspectives. On November 14th, at the 16th Caixin Summit, China's former finance minister Lou Jiwei made a significant statement with far-reaching implications. He noted that China's property tax was proposed in 2013, that the legislation at the National People's Congress level has been completed, and that the technical challenges once seen as insurmountable have largely been resolved. What does this indicate? The underlying message is clear. The property tax has not been a recent development for the leadership. It has been prepared thoroughly for more than a decade, with its implementation delayed only because the timing has not yet been deemed appropriate. So, why raise the issue now? This was not a casual comment. Retired senior officials often serve as channels for official positions, testing public reactions. The most probable intent here is to assess public sentiment, whether there will be a strong opposition or quiet acceptance. Regardless of the motivation, such a statement raises concerns as it suggests the leadership is preparing to move forward. Current fiscal pressures are intense, with tax authorities scrutinizing even small-scale activities like stock trading or online sales. Property tax represents a major potential revenue source. That is why we must revisit this topic today. Is a nationwide rollout imminent? First, let's examine the resolved technical issues. There are essentially two. The first is establishing a nationwide system for property registration. Property tax will include exemptions, such as for a primary residence. However, individuals often own properties in multiple cities. Without the integrated system, taxation would be incomplete. Thus, a unified national database was essential. The second issue is property valuation. To impose the tax, the value of each home must be determined accurately, whether based on bank lending standards or aggregated data from recent sales. The government must handle this carefully, as property tax is a direct levy visible to all. Overvaluing properties relative to market rates would provoke widespread discontent. In my view, these technical matters are relatively straightforward to address. The true barriers to implementation are politics, political risks, and the potential for system crisis. First, political risks. In China, approximately 70% of household wealth is invested in real estate. Introducing property tax without careful consideration could do more than increase financial burdens. It could undermine the sense of long-term security for families. This might destabilize public psychology, accelerate further declines in home prices, foster pessimism, and ultimately threaten social stability. The second barrier is the risk of systemic crisis. The financial system is deeply intertwined with real estate. If property tax leads to sharp price drops, non-performing loans in banks would surge, potentially collapsing the entire sector. Therefore, property tax cannot be implemented at the present. Doing so could have severe consequences. Many assume the delay stems from vested interests resisting taxes on their own holdings. This is a minor factor. The primary concerns are systemic and political risks. Arbitrary tax increases could jeopardize stability. Lou Jiwei's remarks make it evident. Property tax will eventually be introduced. If insiders could block it entirely, the National People's Congress legislation would not have passed. Moreover, alternative revenue streams exist within the system. If real estate no longer provides sufficient funds, other avenues will be pursued. The core issue is fiscal sustainability. With revenues already strained, prioritizing collection is essential, far more so than the exemptions for elites. A robust treasury enables the system to function. Next, when might property tax be implemented? A common view holds that it will coincide with the absolute bottom of the housing market. Prices stabilize, panic subsides, and fiscal needs peak. This seems reasonable on the surface. However, it captures only part of the picture and overlooks practical decision making. Japan's experience provides insight. Property tax there was not introduced at the market's nadir, but after the downturn ended and the prices entered a stable plateau. The reason is straightforward. Imposing taxes during a decline invites political backlash. A housing crash brings market volatility, rising bank losses, shrinking household assets, and developer failures. Public sensitivity to policy is heightened in such conditions. Introducing property tax then would exacerbate the instability. The optimal timing is after prices have declined from their peak. Much of the speculation has dissipated, and the market settles into a period of low volatility and gradual transactions. Prices neither fall nor rise significantly. Participants adjust to the new reality. Fiscal reliance on land sales diminishes, and individuals no longer view housing primarily as an investment. At that point, implementation succeeds because first, stable prices prevent panic selling. Second, reduced speculation stabilizes the bank collaterals. Third, housing returns to its role as a shelter, easing public resistance. And fourth, new revenue is urgently needed to replace land sales income. Currently, however, China's housing prices have not reached that stage. The bubble remains intact, far from a stable post-adjustment phase. This explains Lou Jiwei's timing to gauge public readiness, resistance, or resignation, while uncertainties about the market stabilization persist. We have discussed why property tax cannot proceed now. The fundamental issue is the unresolved real estate bubble. Without addressing excess speculations, true stabilization is impossible. Yet, consider this possibility. China may diverge from Japan's path, leveraging the AI era for a technology-driven restructuring to deflate the bubble. The leadership hesitates because the current economic model cannot absorb the losses. In an AI-driven future, however, those impacts may become manageable. The existing model relies on three interconnected pillars: real estate, infrastructure, and land sales revenue. Rising land prices support local budgets. Stable home prices secure bank assets. Viable developers maintain construction and borrowing chains. A sudden bubble burst would expose bank losses, cause developers insolvencies, cripple local finance, trigger widespread defaults, and heighten social tensions. The current model lacks resilience for this. Thus, prices are allowed modest declines but not full correction, given the system's fragility. The AI era changes this dynamic, introducing new growth, revenue, employment, and assets to offset the real estate declines. For growth, AI enables data centers, advanced manufacturing, and innovative products, expanding economic output. For revenue, potential new levies on computing power, data, and AI profits could fill gaps left by land sales, mitigating fiscal strain from price drops. Finally, AI generates new employment and asset opportunities, easing the impact of falling prices. Currently, price declines devastate the middle class, whose wealth is concentrated in housing. Under AI, demand for traditional urban jobs decreases, reducing the need for city purchases. Remote work and AI-enabled ventures diversify options, diminishing the compulsion to invest heavily in property. Here is a perspective that may challenge some. China requires a universal basic income style safety net even more than the United States. This stems from three pressures: rapid population decline and labor shortages, the unsustainability of the real estate development economy, and AI's disruption of low and mid-skilled jobs, reshaping employment structures. Traditional stability measures like encouraging urban home ownership are no longer viable. A new foundation is needed. Direct cash payments are unlikely, but indirect support through government-subsidized public rentals, affordable units, and housing as a welfare entitlement could emerge. This transforms housing from an investment to a basic service, allowing most families to forego ownership. In essence, China may adopt a Singapore-inspired dual system: market-rate housing for the affluent, subsidized option for others, with homes treated as a public infrastructure. Property tax would then integrate naturally. Skeptics may question the leadership's willingness, but this would not arise from altruism. It would be a pragmatic response to prevent societal collapse. In the AI era, widespread unemployment looms. Without safeguards, instability would mount. Subsidized housing offers an efficient means to maintaining order. Of course, these are informed speculations. The leadership's unique approach to analysis and decisions may lead elsewhere. Choosing a different path could result in social disruption. At a minimum, a loss of authority; at worst, profound upheaval. You might wonder why property tax in China causes such a stir in society. After all, Americans pay property tax too. So isn't China just catching up to the US, modernizing like the rest of the world? In the United States, buying a home means outright freehold ownership of both the building and the land with no expiration date. The property tax is a well-established local levy, typically around 1% of the assessed value, used to fund municipal services like schools and infrastructure. This tax is considered a standard operating cost, integrated into a household's financial planning. For most Americans, housing constitutes about 30% of their total net worth, which is often diversified across retirement funds, stocks, and savings. The tax is manageable, frequently offset by homestead exemptions for primary residents, and it does not fundamentally destabilize a homeowner's financial security or long-term claim on the property. The situation in China is profoundly different due to the lack of private land ownership. All urban land is owned by the state. When a citizen purchases a home, they are acquiring a 70-year leasehold for the land use rights, not the land itself. This makes the home a long-term, high-cost lease where the future is uncertain regarding renewal terms or fees once the 70-year period expires. Financially, the property is not a diversified asset. It represents an average of 70% of a Chinese household's wealth. The purchase price has historically required vast intergenerational savings, making it a family's single largest asset and its primary vehicle for wealth, security, and retirement planning. Introducing an annual property tax, essentially an extra rent on top of this already front-loaded, time-limited cost, is perceived as a significant erosion of security. It feels less like a local service fee and more like a shifting of the state's financial burden onto citizens whose largest asset is already tied to a non-freehold lease. Thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please like it, drop a comment below, and hit the subscribe button right here. It really helps YouTube suggest my video to others. I'll be back with more content soon. Until then, be well.